Hi, everyone. Welcome to the L to L chat. I'm your host, Brittany Oliver from Lemons to Lemonade. Thank you so much for tuning in. As promised, we are here to bring back Danielle, aka Barry, from Podcasts in Color because we had some issues last time. So we're here today to bring her back on to talk to her about podcasting and everything. So before I bring her on stage, I wanted to share a little bit more background about her, but also for everyone who's tuning in for the first time. Welcome to Lemons to Lemonade. Lemons to Lemonade is a platform with career events and contents to help us navigate some of life's lemons. And so we're here to bring events and conversations with some leaders in different industries so you can hear from them, hear about their lemons, hear how they overcame some of their challenges in the industry and made it here today, and how they're disrupting their industry. So I'm excited to bring on Danielle. So Danielle is a founder of and podcast curator of Podcasts in Color. Danielle is the first and foremost a lover of podcasts and the self-proclaimed number one fan of the read. I love that one too. Barry turned that love into podcastincolors.com, the largest directory of podcasts for and by people of color, over 1,000 shows. Born and raised in Denver, Colorado, where she currently resides, podcasts are Barry's link to the outside world. Marketing podcasts is a passion, and she's always looking for creative ways to do it. She's worked on the social media. She has worked as the social media manager for Loudspeakers Network. And so if you know that, I believe the read is on that in that company. She has had events with Spotify and Castbox connecting women of color in the podcast industry and loves events where she can learn more about the medium. Podcasts in Color has over 21,000 followers across social media, facilitating conversations for folks who talk about and share podcasts by racial minorities. So let's bring on Barry.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to have you. So for people who don't know, I was able to interview Danielle or Barry. I interviewed her in 2019 about podcasts. And what was amazing about that conversation was that so many people, all the women that I talked to on that particular Business Insider article, every last one of them mentioned Barry. Every one of them had a relationship to Barry, or at least gave her the props because they felt that she somehow connected them or created an opportunity for them. And so I just thought that was so amazing. And I always knew that I wanted to have you on and talk to you because so many people had so many great things to share with you. And after talking to you, you have so much knowledge around podcasts. Like you literally like live, breathe, and eat this. And so, you're someone who to talk to, someone to know in this industry. And so thank you for sharing space with us today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Of course, thank you for talking to me for that article because I'm always trying to talk more, of course, about PLC podcasts, and I do live and breathe podcasts. So thank you for having me here.
Well, Barry, I want to go ahead and get started. So my first question to you is, why did you start Podcasts in Color?
That's, as you said, feel like I'm the number one fan of the read. And I just noticed that with the people around me, they didn't have the same access to finding podcasts. You know, they had children and lives while I was on social media and Twitter all day. So I was like, being that I see these things, I should make a space for people that don't have time to sit on Twitter and things like that to find podcasts and the other content that, you know, we're making. And that's really like been the thing. I wanted to make it a space so people that weren't on social media still understood these things exist, and find a place to find them.
Awesome. And you've been able to build it so much. There's so many women who are trying to build collectives, podcast collectives or directories. What's your advice on building a good directory? What goes into that and how can you monetize that?
I would say, like, going into a niche, most people think you need to have everything from everybody. Every time they do something, it's like, I just need everybody in it. And it's like, no, like, find your niche of people. If it's just for knitters, people that knit and people that want to learn about that will find you. If it's just for people that like golf, those people are going to find you. Like, I find that I talk about tennis a lot. Like, I've been into that lately, and I'm like, you know what? I'm finding the other PLC people that do tennis and talk about that kind of stuff. Like, if you're into that kind of thing and you're like broadcasting it and letting it know, people that are looking for that are going to find you. So that's what I'm into. And that's why I've like started it. And like, building collectives, like, you just don't have to worry about that. Like, think about the thing you want to do and try to do it.
Awesome. That's so important. Just do it, So, like I said before, you are a thought leader in this industry, and you've played a major role in terms of helping to amplify other podcasts and podcasters of color. So, Black, brown podcasters who are trying to elevate their voice on this, unique medium. And so through that, you've created directories, events. Some of your ideas have helped to spark up accelerators for podcasters. What does it take to be a leader in this industry? What challenges have you experienced while getting more podcasts created by people of color exposure?
Well, one thing I've had to, like, when starting this, it was just more a project of love under, doing that kind of thing. And I think really the whole understanding how much change I can enact or how many things I can like make happen at bigger places really brought to me to notice of like, I should be getting paid for this or figuring out a way that I should be contracting and like, getting money for these things because these companies are making millions of dollars off the ideas of, me helping and doing different things. And so I feel like that's what I'm learning. Like I feel like hits that way where I was like, do I want to do this? I'm the one that signed up to do these things for free. So it's not like they were, asking me to do something. I was asking to be paid. So one thing like last year, I kind of really went through like, what do I want from this space? Do I want to be in this space? And what do I need to do to be in this space and not feel like all I'm doing is giving and people are taking from me, but I'm getting nothing back? So most of that has been like, okay, do the things that you want to do again. Like I kind of started to pigeonhole myself like, okay, new podcasters find me. Okay, I guess I should just be doing podcast one-on-one stuff because those are the people that are finding me. Those are the people that need the resources and that kind of thing. Even though I could see myself moving out of that, like I share that kind of stuff, but I'm moving out of that kind of thing. So lately I've just been like, okay, these are the things I want to do. I do want to share podcasts. But as you said, when we started this, when you talk to other people in an article, I find I do want to work within other people in podcasting and connect them because the connections I've made that people know about and that people don't know about have enacted so many things, especially with like, POC people finding themselves in podcasts like, oh, you do this, oh, you do that, we can work together. And I'm like, that's what I'm really great at. And that's what I'm going to concentrate a lot on public facing things, sharing podcasts, but also connecting podcasters and people working in podcasting to each other. That's a goal for me.
I love it. When you shared that, one of the things that you did was go back to basics, go back to the foundation to see, okay, what do people need from me? What are they willing? And from those needs, those basic needs, how can I monetize that? I think that's something a lot of us who I too find myself in a space where people are always asking me for things, for guidance, and there's just so much time on that calendar, girl, to share, free advice. And so what is it? How do you package that? How do you figure out, okay, let's go back.
Really, Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, really, people asking me and still asking me, and like coming 6 months later and asking me again, as a new person, not like the same people or anything, pushes me to find ways to do things like that. Like someone will ask me something 5 times, and I'm like, you know what? That should be on my website. You know what? That should be an Instagram post, or I should be doing something that explains that more, that I can reference to you so that you can find that, because you're not finding that. So that's what I had to kind of realize, like, okay, they know you know the information, and what they're saying is they can't find the information. So I've been doing things in the background, and I have a new website coming and other things, but I'm like, I'm going to make things clear, because that's what I've been about doing, is making something clear and simple. And like, I've given the steps, but it's like, put the steps in a place where somebody can actually find it and they don't have to keep coming and ask you. And that's what I've been working on. Like, okay, and this is, what everybody does. I'm like, I've come from call center work. So like, those are the kind of things I've done. I'm like, does my knowledge, do people need this? It just feels like other people could probably figure this out, and that kind of thing. And I was like, it's been people in the space that have been like, Barry, like, you're smart. You read about this all the time. Like, your thoughts on this actually matter. People care about this. And that's really what's pushed me. Like, as I was saying, I was thinking about last year, what do I want to do? And it's like, you know what? I just need to lean into the things that I know, the things that I already know people want from me, and making that clear, because as podcasting grows outside the United States and more, people still need this information. I could still be making money off information I didn't make money off of 3 or 4 years ago. And that's how the kind of thing, like, I just need to change my thinking on how things are going. So that's what I've been trying to do.
I love it. I love it. So for any of you who watch this, just think about that thing that people always come to you about. I always say that. That's how you start to build your expertise. Think about what people always ask you about, and you're always giving advice on that. That's what makes you unique. That's your expertise.
And I don't think I always understood that. And like, people would come to me and I'd be like, do I even want to do that? What are they even asking me for? And like, people have had conversations with me, and I'm sure they know they left with me more confused than they were okay. And I'm like, was that what they wanted? Or is that what they were looking for? And I'm like, yeah. They're taking that and hitting me up months later, like, wow, that conversation was what it took for me to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, okay, so, that conversation did lead you to where you needed to go. And sometimes I can just be like, I want to hold your hand the entire time, but I don't have time to do that. So it's like, should I help if I don't have time to hold your hand through the whole thing? But there's people like me that they just need that one conversation. They're like, I can build off of that. And those are the people I'm hoping to connect with. Like, I'm not going to be able to take you through all 5 steps, but I will tell you how it goes down. I'm here if you have questions, but I just can't hold your hand through the whole thing.
Right. I love it. I love it. You want to be a strategist, not an executor, right? Because
Correct.
A lot of founders or people who are starting out, they want someone to just do everything for them, right? But you're in a position where it's like, no, I can give you the strategy. Like, this is how you can like build and execute for like this amount of months, right? Or the first 3 months. And sometimes that's difficult. I've even run into that. A lot of people come to me about pitching the media. And so I rather give you the strategy and the email templates than to actually pitch the media for you, right? But a lot of people are like, I don't have time for that. Like, just do it. And it's like, I don't want to do that. I want to be the strategist, not the executor.
Literally how people come to me. I have these conversations all the time about podcasting, and I'm like, I have ideas, but I don't want to stay around. But I'm like, I was talking to my friends this weekend, and I'm like, I'm just going to start saying more of my ideas, because I understand most of the things I'm thinking about aren't things I want to do. Like, it's not something I would put together. If I got the chance, I probably wouldn't do that. But I can see you are doing something, and this idea would be the thing that you should be doing or like thinking about. And I'm like, I have good ideas that see things coming. Like, most of the conversations I've had in podcasting about like, oh my gosh, I read so much, and just thinking about where we're going to be going, this is probably what's going to happen. And that's the things that come and they're happening. They're like, Barry said that was going to happen. And I was like, so lately I'm like, I kind of wish that, like, it's almost like I'm selling myself in a way, but it's like, I can tell you these are the things you need, and these are the things we should be doing. Like, we're focusing, everybody's all like, how many podcasts are in Apple Podcasts? And I'm like, that doesn't matter. It should be, can you hear me still?
I see.
Oh, it went black. Sorry. for me. And I'm just like, no, you should be focusing on engagement. You should be focusing on yourself. Like, this is the time to focus on yourself, not worrying about how many other things exist or does that, matter to your numbers or not. But like, how should you be engaging fans? How could you be using Clubhouse? How could you then use Spaces? How could you be using, these places and understand what apps should you be on? Should you be on TikTok? Should you be on Instagram? Like, what's going to feed you more? And I'm like, those are the conversations I want to have, because most people aren't understanding. And I'm like, there's going to be some other bursts of things that happen. But if you already have an understanding of what's happening and what's going to come, that will help you more say, I don't have to be on Patreon. If Spaces is coming and people can pay me through Spaces, I should be hosting private spaces and doing different things around my content that way. And I'm like, but you have to be thinking about that, because we all know the first people to things are the people that are able to build, pretty fast and get a following behind different things. I'm like, we should be thinking about what's coming so we can build that. And I was like, that's the reason I got on Clubhouse. And so I could understand what Spaces was going to do to Twitter. So I can understand, faster of like, what should I be doing when I get Spaces? How should I be making sure I'm using Spaces in a way that I'm not behind everybody when I'm like, I should have been doing that. I would have thought to monetize that. I would have thought to, do this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I've been talking about it, but I'm like, I've already started thinking of things. I've been like tweeting little things that I'm like, if you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. But like, there's a whole different world out here. People will sit on Clubhouse all day, but we don't need that. And if you already understand podcasting, you understand audio and like how to get something across in a shorter form. And what could you be doing on Twitter Spaces with already having, the people that follow you that want to listen to those kind of things. So I'm like, that's what me I am. I'm like, I'm an idea person, and I'm just sitting and thinking of things that we should be doing, things that are going to come, things that we should be doing. And I'm like, that's what I can be to a company. And I understand that now. I was trying to just be a podcast curator. I was just trying to work for any podcast company, just give me a job. And now I'm like, you know what? I can do what I'm doing, and maybe I'll work somewhere and maybe that'll work out. But I do know right now, enough people know me, will contract with me for ideas. And that's what I need to lean into. Like, I'm trying to get a job and people are out here trying to pay me. Like, if you would just have a conversation with me, and I'm like, I'm just trying to get to 9 to 5. And they're like, no, but for real, if you would just have a conversation with me, just like 4 times over 4 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, but you know what? That's what you want to do. You don't want to wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning. You don't want to wake up till noon. So why don't you have a schedule where you can schedule all your stuff in the afternoon and that kind of thing? So I feel like just with all of this, I'm just an idea person. I'm searching for the people, as you said, like to not necessarily execute it, but like I'm the person that could probably take you to the next level if you want to do the different things you want to do. And that's what I'm looking to do.
Yes. I love that, Barry. And you started talking about the different jobs. That was my next question to you. What are some trends? I mean, podcasting is more than being the voice behind the mic. There's so many different opportunities to work in the podcasting industry. So what opportunities are out there in the space, and what are some ways people can find full-time opportunities in podcasting?
Always podcast newsletters. They're going to always be the one, like if you find your regular one, they're going to be the ones talking about jobs and that kind of thing. I usually try to post that on Instagram, but there's a lot of things being created because podcasting is new. So it's like people are creating the teams that they need for a podcast. If I'm doing a podcast on different things, I need people with different skills. And that's why Renee Richardson, that's the owner of Broccoli Content in London, she came from the TV world, and she's been able to use her things to come to the audio world, but she wants to eventually go back to TV. But I'm like, it just shows you can use skills from different things to come in and say like, let me do this over here. And if, I can make it work to do something somewhere else. So as far as like the jobs, like people could be leading teams. A lot of people don't understand somebody just needs somebody at home that can organize them and like run their life in the background, like schedule my interviews, schedule me out and just tell me what I need to know. Give me the research I need. We don't need to talk every day, but if you can just give me the information I need so my day can keep flowing, that's the person I'm looking for. So I think some people like I've met friends and I'm just like, oh, okay, it's a job to do this. And I hadn't even thought about that. And they're like, yeah, all I do is schedule guests. That's what I do for this company. And that's a job for me. And it's like, oh, okay. All I do is call and prep people to understand what they're about to do. And, me doing that a couple hours a week with these interviews, that's what they need me to do. All I do is the graphics. They send me the pictures. I don't interact with nobody. All I'm doing is making sure this is all set up. So when they need it, it's there. So when you think about something from the outside, like if you're looking for a job in podcasting, you can say, who is doing that? And one thing I'm big on doing, and this is something I had to learn to do, go to the website or even go to one of their things and learn all the people that work behind one podcast. And that will teach you about things you will never know, because you'll think that there's 3 people on a podcast and there's 15 people running the podcast. And it's like, there's a lot more going on in the background than you think. So if you look into the background of a podcast, that can also teach you about different jobs you might be able to get in the industry.
That's a thank you, because so many people. Well, one thing you mentioned with Renee, I'm noticing there's a lot of people who have been in TV moving to podcasts. I believe, I think her name's Corinne. She used to be at OWN. Just recently announced that she was going to, she's at Spotify. So there's been some really interesting movement, people shifting from film, TV to audio.
And there's been some audio people that have switched to TV. Like there was a Spotify person that just left and they're going to do a TV thing. So like it's a lot going on.
Yeah, but it shows that a lot of this is intertwined. There's a reason for it. And even writers, I'm seeing a lot more opportunities for writers in the podcast industry. I guess for scripts and
Writers Guild of America has come. So that there's unions around writing, which is, bringing more people in to make them feel safer about being in a space and creating content.
Awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, y'all. You don't have to be, the person behind the mic, the face of the podcast to be in the industry. And so if you have a skill set and you like podcasting, find a different way to break in. And get those full-time benefits too.
A lot of people are doing production houses. That's where the money is right now. So a lot of people are doing production houses and they need people to feel like, different things. So it's like, if you look at people that are building, because they're talking about it, they're doing interviews, like search podcasts and look at the news tab on Google and those kind of things. You can see the people putting projects together, which means that they'll have jobs up soon. And that'll kind of tell you, if you see something announced in Deadline, that just means that soon they're going to be hiring producers and other, podcast background people. So you kind of want to follow who is that company that announced that, and let me go search and see where they list jobs.
So important just to think outside the box, on what you can do. Mm-hmm. And so you also started talking about trends. So what are some trends you're seeing within the podcasting that you hope more podcasters of color consider when it comes to growing their content or their audience, rather?
I would say, as far as trends, people understanding how graphics connect to the podcast, like how visuals connect. One thing I've always been about is comparing how we said TV and audio. I'm like, TV for years, at the end of TV shows, they give you the little clip, come back next week. These are a few things that are going to happen, next week, and those kind of things. And I've always been like, what are you giving people that says come back next week? That it's just not ending people, ending now. So more trends I'm seeing is people are doing audiograms more. People are bringing back old content. Like, I've been podcasting for 2 years. You need to know about my archives. So let me talk about the episodes I did that may connect. Like Dr. Joy will do different things. Like, these are 5 episodes I did on this subject. These are 5 episodes I did on Black women. These are, just bringing up the old archive and not thinking it's only going to be your new content that pops off. Because on Twitter all the time, we're always seeing some viral video that was from years ago. But the fact that it existed, it now can go viral. So kind of just putting yourself in that position. And also a trend that I've been pushing is hashtags. Know what a hashtag is, have your own hashtag, just that we have hashtag L2L chat, and use it and say it, because the more we have social media, where we have TikTok and other things, if you're on those, if people are talking about you on those different mediums, they can use that hashtag, and that way you can find out if you're on TikTok, do people talk about my podcast? Oh, they've used my hashtag. Oh, I can go look and these kind of things. So if you're thinking about something that's what works across all mediums, it's always going to be a hashtag, no matter what new medium it is, so that you can then find the people that are posting about you and your content as it grows different places. So that's one thing is I'm big on hashtags, even on Clubhouse and that kind of thing, big on it.
Love it. Yeah, a hashtag is really great to just track the conversation, and you can even track industries related to yours. So maybe there's not a lot on your particular hashtag, but there may be something that's related And so you can kind of join that conversation. But a lot of times we do miss, especially Twitter. Twitter is really good for this. You may miss, someone may have listened to your podcast and they used the hashtag and you missed that they quoted or said something about it. Look on there and see what kind of conversations are happening and like join those. It's really good for engagement.
Yes, I'm telling, it's so weird. And I try to tell people this. I'm like, when you engage with people that listen to your podcast, and when they at you and you're like, oh, that's cool, and that kind of thing, they do it again. I do it again. Like, there are podcasts I listen to. I listen to Scam Goddess. I always know if I tweet about her podcast, most likely, and Lacey is a busy chick. Like, she's doing HBO shows, she has Nickelodeon, she has a whole bunch of things. But she's always going to be, at some point, she's going to be like, thank you for listening. Or she's going to make sure to retweet, like, from the podcast account and her account. And, like, she's going to engage with it. And I'm like, I appreciate that because I'm tweeting about your podcast. I'm tweeting a link to your podcast and that I like it. So what's it to you to retweet it? And that's actually, spreading the news about your content. So I don't think a lot of people think about that. Now it all connects back that is still spreading you if you retweet somebody talking about you. So
yeah, and always be gracious, right? Thank people for taking the time to listen or like or whatever, People
it's
appreciate
the little things.
Exactly. And so a lot of times we talk about money, and like in our Business Insider interview, we talked about the money discrepancy with podcasters in color, but in particular women of color. And so, I wanted to dive into that a little bit today. Why is it difficult for podcasters of color to get the same revenue opportunities? What are some of the suggestions to equalizing the playing field for podcasters to strategize revenue?
I think that like most people want to go about the same things they see. You hear like, the mattress ads, you hear the food ads, and you're like, I want that thing. And that's the thing that's going to make me money. But it's like, if you're thinking outside the box, and one thing that's why I always like, if you research a podcast and maybe what's the point of the podcast and if that podcast even makes money, a lot of people don't even think about, the extra things. It's like, what else could you be monetizing? Like, we have a lot of Black businesses. We have a lot of, different businesses when we hear about, we're like, that exists, or, where's the companies that are do that? And it's like, what if you reached out to one of the companies that you hear about people asking about, and you're like, what if you placed an ad on my podcast and we figure out those different things? Because if they're just looking for the top podcasts, which the top podcasts have been male white podcasts, because those are the people that are pushed in different things. That's what you're going to get. So just like how we do everything else and we have to find our people and we go to our people to figure things out, I think that's what people should be thinking. Like, when we're thinking about this, we're usually thinking about these huge white companies, and it's like, there are still Black companies. We still have, companies like Curlbox, and it's like, what if you could figure out something with Myleik and she already has a podcast, and you're like, well, maybe we can do a little box maybe for my podcast, and I have a hair podcast, so maybe we could do a box that's like a small box for my podcast, and we're promoting both of us. And it's like, think outside the box, because those are what those companies are doing. That podcast company was like, you could sell on our podcast. We think that the people that listen will make meals at home, or the people that listen will buy a mattress in a box to get it. And it's like, what do the people like you like to buy? So when you're thinking about that and you're thinking about your friends, you're like, my friends like to buy jewelry. My friends really like to buy perfume. My friends are, those sage and stone type people. So maybe I should be looking at those kind of companies because they're looking for deals. If I told my friend I got 50% off of, some stones, she's going to be like, oh, I've been meaning to go get a couple of more and I'm going to do it. So it's kind of like thinking about the things that are around you and the things that people want around you. And that's what I think a lot of people kind of miss, which I think Hey Friend Hey does so well, which is why people always sell out her stuff, because she's like, I use this, I think you might like this. And a lot of people don't like miss that. And I'm like, the companies that have been on the friend zone and like pay for ads, a lot of that was drawn up by them mentioning Black companies and those people going to those companies and selling things out and them being like, where did all this come from? And they're like, I should be placing ads on your thing because obviously you've got the sauce to sell my thing. And it's like, a lot of people are scared to mention a company. And I'm like, I'm not scared to mention a company because many people have found me because I was talking about different things. And that went back to the podcast, and that podcast found me like, what was that? And then, that all came together. So I'm like, you can't be afraid to do that and to kind of see what kind of power you have or what your fans like. Like, if you're thinking about those kind of things and thinking outside the box, I think you have more revenue opportunities. Like we're getting into makeup and like those kind of things. Black people make makeup, like, you know, we're seeing Rihanna and the things. And it's like, if you're thinking about this, you got to almost come in with Rihanna. Like there's a million people here, but when I show up with my sauce, they're going to want me. And like, you know, those kind of things. So I think in the regular revenue type of things, it's like if you have a podcast and you know your podcast is doing well and you're like, the people that watch me are YouTube people. And those are the people that kind of want to learn about like a stand. So I should be doing Amazon links or something like that, because most likely it's going to be stuff they're buying off of Amazon for their own YouTube channel or like, you know, their own like different things. Like what are people coming to you for? What do they want? When I'm listening to Hey Fran Hey, she's the reason I have oils. She's the reason I have sage. She's the reason I have a lot of things. And I'm like, what are the people coming to you for? And kind of just like we did the skills, figure out how to lean into that. And I think a lot of people, as far as PLC podcasts, aren't doing that in ways where you're like, if people are always talking to me about books and the books that I buy, because I only mention them every 5 minutes, why wouldn't you be leaning into that? Why wouldn't you be going with a bookstore like I'm trying to do this kind of thing? Maybe I do a little book box because I've been thinking about like, you know, boxes and stuff like that now. So like, what if I thought about a box? Lately, I love this artist called Andrea Pippins, learned about her from podcasts. She's Black and she did a project with Five Below, which is a cheap store. Everything is Five Below. And but like, it was an artist pack. So like she had puzzles, there was coffee cups, there was like a little artist kit that, you know, the paint and sip type thing where it was like, you could just paint it and the paint came with it. But I'm like, those are the things that why wouldn't somebody lean into that? A lot of podcasts are always trying to have a live event and, you know, like people want to watch them. But I'm like, what if you did a paint and sip as your podcast and you sent out the things and it was your podcast logo? Like, what about thinking outside the box of like, what could you be doing to engage and also make money from people that want things from you? We all have posters. We all like that there's, you know, we have workspaces that we have posters up and the little things we like. And it's like, what are you giving people to fill up that space with your logo? You haven't given anything. You've given them a t-shirt. You've given them a coffee cup. But if I don't want a t-shirt and I don't want a coffee cup, how do I still, you know, get a sticker or something that, you know, put it in my office space and somebody's like, what's that? Or, you know, putting it on my sticker of a magnet. So I think that a lot of people are so used to the coffee cup, t-shirt type of thing. They're not thinking, I should have refrigerator magnets because that's where the people are going to do things. People are hanging stuff on there for their kids and stuff. And I can be on the refrigerator when people come by, they'll see my, you know, podcast logo, like, what's this? And then, you know, they'll check it out. We're not thinking outside the box yet. And that's what I think is stopping a lot of ad revenue. I'm like, we have to kind of be like Issa Rae. Like, how are you going to get this money? Are you linking up with your friends? And you like, I'm a crowdfund until somebody pays me. Like, what are you doing? Because it was never t-shirts. It was never coffee cups. And so I think most people think like, I need to go along the road everybody else is going. And it's like, you know, but you do need to find your road and how that's going to go.
Girl, so many gems because you're even like, you're literally screaming at me and you don't even know it. I'm like, oh, things I should be doing, right? So those were some really great tips, you know, for us to just think about it. Just sit back and think about how can we be doing things different? How can we be doing them better? You don't have to go the same road. It takes a long time to like get those dollars from these major companies. So find a way to
like, sorry to interrupt. I do think seeing other women in different fields, seeing them come up has helped me in different ways. Like there's a thing called a company called Unwrapped. If you look it up, it's a Black woman that runs it. And I've just seen her grow. And I'm like, wow, if you told me she was where she is today, like 4 years ago, I'd have been like, oh, you know, it's just those little things. That's just a little side company. And like, that's all her money now. And so like now I've been looking at Black women that have been like, nah, I'm out here grinding. And I'm like, you know what? That's what we should all be doing. Finding our path. Her path ain't through Walmart, but her path is through some good money. So like, that's what you have to think about.
Facts. So, Barry, you know, before we wrap up, I want to know what podcasts are you currently listening to and why? And what are your all-time faves? I know you said The Read.
Yes. Let's see. All-time faves. There's a podcast called Historically Black. excuse me, that was done by APM. And at the time, this is probably like 4 years ago, they had the popular Black podcasters of the time do different episodes. And so I was like, that is really dope. So like, it's kind of like a time capsule of something that we won't get, like Heaven and Tracy together, and like, you know, other different things that you don't even think about, that I'm like, they're talking about Black history, and it's also my favorite podcasters. So that's an all-time fave. One podcast that's newer that's worked its way in is Okay Now Listen, which is a Netflix podcast, but I love that podcast. They are hilarious to me. And they're younger than me, which is what I really like, is like hearing opinions of like different ages and that kind of thing. So I'm not stayed in my like almost 40 years old age. It's just like hearing like the different things. And then I was trying to think, of course, you know, I said the Read, the Casey Crew. I love the Casey Crew for reasons that I don't even speak out loud, but Gia is just hilarious to me. Like, I think they really helped me see how a marriage between people that I would be like, that person seems silly all the time, but this person seems really serious, and like how that works out. And, you know, people are together 20 to 30 years and that kind of thing, all the kids that they have, and like how they do things. And I was like, one thing I'm a big about is like healing old traumas and that kind of thing. But one thing that Casey Crew does is like they talk to their children. I was like, there's a lot of good parents, but not a lot of people can say they have teenagers and like people that are 18 to 20 years old that are still calling their parents on a regular basis. Like, do you think I should do this? Do you think I should do that? You know, and really taking in their opinion. And I was like, I like that the Casey Crew kids are kids in a way that they're open and have conversations with their parents. And I'm like, those are the kind of parents I hope that the people around my age would be like people that talk to their children. You could have any open conversation, like kind of say anything and still have that respect. And I'm like, they do that well. So even though DJ Envy says crazy stuff, it's a great
podcast. Okay, so those are your all-time favorite, and are you currently listening to those two? What's like one that you're currently?
I would say I'm currently listening to those. One that's about to end, and I would say this is my last all-time fave, is Latinos Who Lunch. And that's by two men, and they're actually ending soon, pretty soon. The podcast ends, but it's went on for about 5 or 6 years, and it's a lot of information. And I would say they're artists. They've been through school. They've been through a lot. Like Favi Fav, he's been here. I've done like podcast meetups with him and everything, and he's taught me more about museums and like Latino history and like the different things that he does. And that's one I would say I listen to in binges. I would go a couple of months and then come back and take in all the information. Like I do silly podcasts that I can do anytime, and then some podcasts that are more serious. So my attitude has to kind of be around that and be able to take in like what I'm about to take in.
Right. Love it. So those are some new podcasts. Those are some podcasts a lot of us that are tuning in can like check out.
Yes.
And my last question for you, Barry, is I love to ask all of my guests this, but what lemon have you faced in podcasting that you were able to turn into lemonade?
I feel like the lemon that I recently had to turn into lemonade was the whole understanding that like with Spotify Sound Up, you know, I did a brunch that called Amp Brunch that led to the Sound Up program and that kind of thing. And understanding that like, even though I tried to be hired by Spotify, that didn't work, even though I helped create a program that's like one of your biggest things in podcasting. And I think one thing that helped me realize lately is that even though I couldn't do that, it doesn't mean I can't do the same thing by myself or enact those same type of changes and get paid for it. So I was like, Spotify has kind of taught me like, this is how far your idea could go. And you never thought something like this could ever go any further, or like, you know, like to think further. Nobody even saw Win McCullough before you wanted to do Amp Brunch at Spotify. And now like that is a huge thing that people see. So I'm like, you know what? I can do that with more things. Like I'm an idea person and I can't get stuck in the one idea that I had and I can't be a part of it. I can do that with other things and be fruitful with it, because like, as we said, like my thing is in the execution. I kind of just want to know that like I did something, I have some IP for it, and I got paid for it, and that's what I wanted to realize. So I feel like they've taught me a lot, and seeing how big that program is, I'm like, that's a huge thing, and not many people can say that. So like, not many people can say they can have the ideas that made people see women in podcasting, and a program grew out of that that will help women in podcasting all over the world. And that's something special to me that nobody else will have.
Yeah. First, Barry, I want to say this to you. Thanks for sharing that and being transparent, because a lot of people don't know that you played a major part in that. And then two, I remember when you told me this for our interview, and just some of the things that you were experiencing in terms of, finding that full-time job. And you're just such an expert in the space. You've been able to like put so many women on, but it was kind of like, when will it be my turn?
Exactly.
Right? And I felt that so much because, people, that was my own journey. That was even my space that I was in at the time that we interviewed. I too have felt like, I can get people jobs, I can get them this and this, but then I can't do it for myself. Like, I don't understand. Or I have these great ideas, and, you do the one partnership, and then someone takes it and they run with it, and then they leave you out. And it's sad to see, companies do that. Sometimes you want those partnerships to validate you, but then you have to realize that you don't need that. Like,
Exactly.
you got the sauce and the juice, right? Like, it's you, and you did that, and you did that, but you can recreate it in a different way and have the ownership that you're looking for.
And that's it. And that's one thing like I had to let go of to almost like grow from. And it's like, that's a huge thing.
Tough. I bet that was tough. Like, because when you told me that, I was angry. Like, when we got off the phone, I cried for you, and I was angry for you because I knew what that felt like. And so I just could only imagine. I'm so glad you shared that with everyone, because that's a real thing that a lot of us, we find ourselves in these positions. We want to partner with people, to fund the ideas that we have. We see so many other people get their ideas funded.
And you think,
but then you never just imagine those ideas get funneled in a different way, and then you're left out.
Yes.
And you're still trying to find that full-time job, those benefits, and just the respect.
And that's how it all goes down. I was just like, coming from, as I said, like the call center life, like I don't think I ever expected to be in this side of podcasting or be understood in a way. And I think I'm like, lessons have to be like taught, and now those are the things that I think. But I'm like, now when I see somebody else doing something early, or like they're early into like trying to do different things in podcasting, I'm like, no,
early adopters,
get paid. I'm like, no, get paid. They understand what they're doing. They have the money. They have the budget. Like, that's not helping you. You feel like it's helping you, but in the end, it's not going to be. So get paid.
Exactly. So thank you so much, Barry, for just sharing space with us. I appreciate you so much for your honesty, your transparency, and just your gems. I mean, you just gave so much real advice on, one, going back to basics when it comes to figuring out your expertise and how to monetize it, all the way down to thinking outside the box when we want to get this revenue and advertising together. You don't have to keep chasing what everyone else is chasing. Think of different avenues. And so that was really good food for thought for all of us, for me. So I definitely will be going back to the drawing board on that. So thanks again. I appreciate you. Just know that in this community of content creators, we see you, we love you.
Thank you.
And you are appreciated.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
No problem. Well, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. Unfortunately, for those of you who don't know, we had to cancel tomorrow's masterclass. I just thought with the state of the world we're in right now, a lot of trauma, Black trauma keeps continuing to happen. I've personally experienced loss within the last week and just
Oh,
wanted to
I'm
give
sorry for
that
your
space.
loss.
Thank you. So I just wanted us all to just have space to feel how we feel. And instead, we're going to just bring Tiffany back on like a LinkedIn Live later on in the month. I'm going to work with her and see what date, but just tune in for that. And next week, we have the ladies of Coins Over Gossip. They'll join us on the 22nd to just really talk about how to negotiate and get what you can from your negotiations, because there's a lot of things that we don't know that we can get from our jobs. And so they're going to spill the tea on that, the do's and don'ts, and the myths, break down the myths. So tune in next week. Thank you so much again, Barry. You all have a wonderful Thursday. I'm not Thursday, Wednesday evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.